Hey there friends and enemies, JoPaWrites here again, and today I want to talk about a build with my favorite combination for the Titan right now in Destiny 2. That is Strand with the Dunemarchers exotic leg armor. This is a lot of fun, and I am absolutely a Dunemarchers main in PvE right now, which no one would have ever told me before, but this is an absolute blast. So, if you've forgotten, the armor perk for Dunemarchers is linear actuators. Increases sprint speed, which is a lot of fun, pairs really well with Grapple. Sprinting builds up a static charge. After melee attacking an enemy, that charge will chain damage to nearby enemies. Now this is very fun for three reasons. It pairs with the grapple melee, it pairs with the regular melee, which we have 3 charges of, and it pairs with the super. The light attack for the super does work with Dunemarchers. So that makes it incredibly useful for ad clear. You can get yourself into and out of danger very quickly and just destroy everything in a nearby radius, which I love. If you know me, you know I love just absolutely decimating the enemies, and this is something that works out very, very well. So getting into the build, I'm also going to talk about at the end of the video a couple other things, including the two-tailed fox catalyst and why it's so good, as well as the difficulty people are having with this week's Nightfall, the arms dealer. Now, they did make a bunch of changes to arms dealer, so I wanted to get in all that, because you're not alone if you are struggling on it. I've had to help a ton of randoms with it, but I'll get into all that in a second. So as far as my build goes, I am rocking the Berserker with the Grapple melee. The Frenzied Blade melee is obviously the same, and the 2 aspects that we have are unchanging. So as far as the fragments I'm rocking, I have Thread of Continuity, Suspend, Unravel, and Sever effects. Applied to targets have increased duration. I suspend a lot of things. It's especially helpful against unstoppable champions, which is very nice. Thread of Transmutation, well, you have Woven Mail, Weapon Final Blows create a Tangle. Tangles are very useful with the artifact perks right now. And then Thread of Propagation, Powered Melee Final Blows grant your strand weapons Unraveling Rounds. Unraveling Rounds work against the barrier champions, so that's very important as well. Essentially, with this build, I can take out any type of champions that I want and never have to take the build off to adjust for what champions are in an activity. Then we've had Thread of Mind. Defeating suspended targets grants class ability energy. So all that combines to really have a fun loop of suspending, getting unraveling rounds, and then taking out those enemies, and then moving on to the next group, and rinse and repeat. And so it's just really, really nice. The loop is fantastic. As far as my mods, I am rocking Strand Siphon and Void Siphon. I've got Firepower Heavy-Handed Strand Loader. I've also got Solar Damage Resistance because for the Nightfall this week it is Solar Damage increased. Void Reserves Unflinching Strand Aim. We've got double Void Weapon Surge and a Strand Weapon Surge, and then triple Time Dilation. Essentially, I want to increase my damage for my weapons at all times, and it is very nice, so that's why I'm rocking 2 Void Weapons and then 1 Strand Weapon as well. So keep that in mind. I also have the heavy ammo finder as well, because I do want as many rockets for my two-tailed fox as possible. As far as the weapons that I'm rocking, I've got Rufus's Fury. This one has rewind rounds and hatchling, which again, it doesn't have a damage perk, but is a lot of fun, and I just found it to be very, very effective. This thing slaps, and I highly recommend chasing one if you do raids. You could also use a Perpetualis or one of the Strand SMGs if you'd like, but I just find that Rufus's Fury just is better right now because of how good it is in the game. I'm also rocking a Snorri. This one was a kind of a last minute choice. I've been mixing and matching what void weapons. I did use a glaive for a little bit, but also I just enjoy using the Snorri because I have Compulsive Reloader and Reservoir Burst on it. So it's just a nice little loop that it has. And honestly, if I was doing a Grandmaster or something like that, I'd probably swap this out for something a little bit better. But overall, it is a fun weapon, and that's why I rock it. I just love making things explode with Reservoir Burst. That said, again, if I was doing boss damage or if I needed something for Grandmasters, I would swap this out for maybe a glaive, maybe something like a Null Composure or something like that. That's going to hit a little bit harder. Now let's get into the two-tailed fox. So if you missed it, this season we got the Catalyst, which is called Third Tail, adds an additional arc rocket to the second shot in a volley. The arc rocket jolts targets. This is very nice because the Two-tailed fox was already pretty strong, but now it does really good damage, especially after they just fixed the bug that the third tail wasn't firing. So it does a bunch of damage. It can stun overload champions. It can suppress enemies. It burns them over time. Yeah, the Void Rocket suppresses, the Solar Rocket causes damage over time, and then the Arc Rocket jolts targets. So essentially, it can do all the things, and it's very nice. It does a lot of damage, like I said. People have been using it in the raid to take out Nezarec. It's just a very good weapon, and one that you should absolutely be trying to get the catalyst for, if at all possible, and completing that, because it does change the game with this weapon. Highly recommend for sure. I forgot to mention that my artifact perks that I have on, Threaded Blast, I've got Bricks from Beyond, Allied Unraveling, as well as Untangler, Voldo Flow, and then authorized mods for Strand, Grenades, and then the multi-siphon mods. And then finally I've got Autoload SMG and AR, Unstoppable Scout, and then Anti-Barrier Pulse Rifle. So let's talk a little bit about the arms dealer Nightfall this week and the changes that Bungie has made. So now we have a lot more Threshers, but a ton more turrets. Those are the things to be careful for in this Nightfall. And as I was playing with randoms, because I do like to get my gameplay with random other players who don't have cracked builds and aren't carrying, so I don't look even better than the build actually might be on its own, I've seen that they just absolutely struggle with the turrets, especially in the final boss room. I had teammates who would die over and over and over and over again, and it's really unfortunate. You have to be very, very careful as you're going through this Nightfall, because it can catch you off guard. The original arms dealer was one of the easiest strikes to take on, and I think a lot of people got complacent with it. And now that they've made some adjustments, it is a little bit of an increased difficulty, and there are some things to be aware of. Again, those turrets, they can spawn and then melt you before you even realize they've loaded in, if you're not careful. So one thing I would do is, as you're coming up the elevator to get to the boss, you definitely want to go find cover right away, because turrets will spawn on both sides of you and just destroy you if you want to sit there and try to melt the boss. Now, if you have a well, obviously that's going to come into effect, and you're able to just pop your well and kind of tank everything for a little bit. But a lot of times when if you're in a team with randoms who are not communicating, you don't know if they're going to pop that well or not, so you're better off just finding some cover, destroying them. Same thing with as you do boss damage, you're going to have more little flurries of enemies that come in, including more turrets. So that's just something to be aware of. I had a lot of times where my teammates, again, were just dying to the turrets because they weren't aware that they had even spawned or anything like that. And the content itself, I don't think it's overly difficult. You just have to kind of play around the turrets and the threshers and all that kind of stuff. And be careful not to just get absolutely melted when you're not paying attention. Overall, I think the strike is a lot of fun now. I think it provides a good level of challenge, especially even on lower difficulty levels. Like, I think there are people who, as I was doing this on Hero, were having just a hard time. There were people that would stay. I saw a post on Twitter where someone was in the Nightfall for like over an hour, which is insane to me that that person would keep staying after all of that. That's wild. But those are the type of people that I would personally want to help out and try to help them complete the mission, because it does feel very rewarding once you finally get the clear. And I don't think it's that difficult if you know what to expect, and a lot of people, I think, are just being caught off guard. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, helps me out tremendously. Obviously, I'm throwing out tons of Destiny content on the channel right now. I'm absolutely loving the game and having a blast with it. All these builds and the build potential has been so much fun to try out and check out and experiment with, and I think a lot of it will change from season to season with how crazy the artifact perks are. Anyway, my name is JoPa. I hope you have a good one, and I'll catch you all later.